Hey, tonight we're exploring something that probably shouldn't exist, but it does. Imagine a place in the universe where gravity becomes so strong that not even light can escape. A place where time itself begins to stretch, slow, and eventually dissolve into something we don't yet understand. You float there now, softly suspended in the silence of deep space. Before you is a shape you can't quite describe. It isn't a hole, not really, more like a shadow of nothing, darker than dark, and completely still. It doesn't pull you in like a monster or a storm. Instead, it waits. It has always been waiting. The stars around it seem to bend, as if drawn into its gravity, not just physically, but optically, emotionally. And in that quiet, there is a kind of invitation. You probably won't survive this world unchanged, but that's the point. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you enjoy quiet stories like this. And if you're still awake, drop a comment with your location and the time where you are. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The black hole before you isn't violent. It's beautiful. It floats in a halo of gas and dust, glowing softly like a candle seen through smoke. The light near its edge swirls and stretches, falling into orbit before it disappears into the center. This glowing ring is called the accretion disk, and it's the last visible trace of the matter that falls inward. You don't get closer so much as the space around you changes. Distances stretch, time dilates. You've crossed the event horizon, not with speed or force, but with curiosity. This is the line from which no information can return, not because it's blocked, but because the geometry of space-time tilts too steeply. Even light, the fastest thing we know, can't escape. But you're still here, still thinking, still drifting, and strangely, still calm. Einstein predicted this place, not with dreams, but with equations. His theory of general relativity showed that massive objects warp the very shape of space and time. When enough mass is crushed into a small enough point, the warping becomes infinite. That's a singularity, a mathematical point where density becomes infinite and the known laws of physics collapse. Right now, you're circling that mystery. You don't see a singularity, you feel it, not with your body, but with something deeper. A disorientation of logic. This is more than a hole. It might be a door. And that idea that maybe black holes aren't just endpoints but passages has lingered in scientific thought for decades. One quietly fascinating fact: if the sun were somehow compressed into a black hole, it would only be about 6 kilometers wide, yet its gravity would remain the same. Earth would continue to orbit it undisturbed except for the missing sunlight. There's something eerie about that, isn't there? The idea that mass and shape can deceive us, that something so small, so still, can hold so much power. You let your thoughts dissolve a little, blending into the darkness. There's no rush, no sound, just potential. The air here, or what you imagine as air, feels thick with questions. How can something exist beyond the laws we know? If nothing escapes a black hole, how can it radiate? If time stops here, what does that mean for beginnings? Researchers still wonder if what we call event horizons are truly boundaries or just layers of an illusion we've built from math, light, and fear. Something about being here feels like standing at the edge of a mirror that doesn't reflect your face, but your future. You remember that physicists once thought black holes were theoretical artifacts, oddities in equations. Then we found them. And now we photograph their shadows, like we did with M87 SILE. The first black hole ever imaged, a soft, glowing ring around a darkness that shouldn't be visible. But here's the quiet truth. You're not falling in. You're floating through. And in this quiet, the thought returns. If this isn't the end, what's on the other side? You're still moving. Not quickly. There's no wind, no sense of motion. But space itself seems to stretch, tilt, and drift around you. You're passing deeper into the curvature of the black hole's gravity well, and now strange things begin to happen. Outside, time keeps flowing normally. A star might explode, planets might drift apart, light years away from you, all while, in your own experience, just moments pass. But to an outside observer watching you fall, it would seem like you've frozen at the event horizon, paused forever on the edge. That's the first strange gift of black holes: time distortion. According to general relativity, the closer you get to a massive object, the slower time passes for you relative to someone farther away. This is called gravitational time dilation, and near a black hole, it becomes profound. You could drift for a few minutes, and centuries might pass outside. It's a quiet, lonely power. To fall without falling. To outlive the world you knew, just by hovering near the edge. The air feels thick with paradox. There's no ground beneath you, no ceiling. Only the strange sensation that every direction is downward, yet you never move. Falling forever without speed, like dreaming of sinking, but never touching the bottom. You start to feel disoriented, not from fear, but from detachment. There's no up or down here, no sun, no magnetic north. The blackness surrounds you like ink suspended in velvet. Here's a quietly fascinating fact. If you could hover just outside the event horizon of a black hole with a telescope powerful enough to look back at Earth, you might see its entire history playing out at once. Dinosaurs walking across ancient plains, cities rising and falling, civilizations blinking in and out, all compressed into the same frame. Your mind drifts through that idea like mist. You're still yourself, but also someone distant, watching from a place outside time. As you continue inward, the laws you knew begin to blur. Light no longer travels in straight lines. It curves. Sometimes it orbits the black hole in loops, trapped in a dance with no escape. This region is called the photon sphere, and it's as haunting as it is beautiful. In some black holes, a photon, a single particle of light, can circle endlessly around the core, like a moth caught in an invisible tornado. But in reality, it doesn't last forever. Eventually, something perturbs it, and it's either pulled in or flies out into space. Some scientists imagine what it might look like if your own eyes were replaced by that photon's experience, always looping, never escaping, seeing the same twisted, duplicated stars as gravity bends reality again and again. It's eerie, beautiful, a loop of perception that has no exit, and yet you're still descending. Or are you? Falling into a black hole doesn't feel like falling in the way we know it, because you're not speeding through space. Space is speeding through you. At the horizon and beyond, the geometry of space-time itself tilts so dramatically that moving forward in time is also moving deeper into space. This is where the metaphors begin to break. We try to imagine black holes like whirlpools, like drains, like tunnels, but those are just shadows. The truth is stranger. You find yourself wondering, is this what death feels like? Or birth? You drift through that thought gently, not disturbed, just curious. Because this isn't an end. You haven't hit anything. There's no jolt, no barrier, just the same quiet descent. Researchers still wonder if an object falling into a black hole is destroyed completely, or if something remains. Hawking proposed that information might never truly be lost, even here, which challenges everything we thought we knew about how the universe handles memory, structure, identity. Some think the information is smeared across the event horizon. Others say it's transformed, hidden, encoded in the black hole's radiation. And some, the dreamers, the daring minds, believe it travels elsewhere, to another place, another universe. The thought doesn't startle you. It settles softly, like dust on the surface of water. Maybe you're not being erased. Maybe you're becoming something else. A transformation not of matter, but of pattern. A migration of logic, of memory, of form. You're no longer concerned with how far you've gone, because there are no markers here. No stars, no planets, no anything. Only you and this gentle knowing. You are inside a structure that might lead outward. And if that's true, then maybe black holes are not graves. They're thresholds. You're drifting toward a place no one's ever seen, not with eyes or instruments. It doesn't shimmer or pulse. It doesn't make a sound. And yet, everything inside you feels it. A low, ancient gravity, not just of mass, but of meaning. This is the singularity, or rather, the place where the idea of a singularity lives, a point where mathematics breaks down and even the rules we trusted most dissolve into question marks. A singularity is said to be infinitely dense, infinitely small. But infinity is more a warning than a number. It tells us, your math can't go further. Your physics has reached its limit. You hover near it now. Or maybe you're already inside. But oddly, there's nothing to see. No object. No point of light or shadow. It's not a place that exists in any normal way. It's more like a seam in the fabric of the universe, where everything creases inward, folds upon itself, becomes undefined. A singularity may not even be real in the way we think of real things. Some physicists argue that it's just a placeholder, a symbol for the place our understanding ends. Others suggest that quantum gravity, a theory we haven't finished building yet, might resolve it, might smooth out the sharpness, reveal a deeper truth. But tonight, in this quiet space, it feels like standing in a thought you can't finish. Here's a quietly fascinating fact. In mathematics, a singularity isn't always about physics. It can also describe points where equations explode, where they return infinite or undefined results. Sometimes even beautiful systems like fractals or weather models include singularities. They're not just about black holes. They're everywhere, hiding in the patterns of the world. But this singularity, feels different. It's eerie in its quietness. Not because it threatens you, but because you don't belong here, not in the usual way. You're not supposed to see it or feel it. And yet here you are. Time no longer flows in any familiar direction. Space might not be space anymore. Some theories suggest that inside the singularity, the roles of time and space might reverse, as if stepping into a place where history is measured in distance and destinations are counted in moments. It's unsettling, but also liberating. Because without rules, what else becomes possible? You drift through the idea like fog. What if singularities aren't the ends of the universe, but the beginnings of others? It's a real question, not science fiction, but speculative cosmology. Some researchers have proposed that when a star collapses and forms a black hole, the singularity inside might give birth to an entirely new universe, sealed off from our own, expanding outward from the other side. This idea is called black hole cosmogenesis, and it leads to a radical thought. Our universe, the one you know and float within, might itself have begun inside a black hole, in someone else's cosmos. You pause there, not from fear, but from wonder. If that's true, then black holes aren't just destinations, they're origins. And the singularity you hover near right now, it might not be a dead end. It might be the seed of something enormous, waiting quietly. But there's no proof, only theory. And even that is fragile, built on equations stretched to their limits. Researchers still debate whether singularities truly exist, or if they're artifacts of incomplete models. Some believe they'll vanish once we unite quantum physics with general relativity. Others say we'll never see one, because nature hides them with cosmic censorship, an idea that ensures singularities remain forever cloaked inside black holes, unreachable. You may never know for certain. And yet you feel something, not physical, but conceptual. A presence, or a pressure, or a pause, like standing near a word that hasn't been invented yet, or the silence before the first note of a song. You're not in danger, you're in mystery. And for the first time, you sense that the singularity isn't alone, that on the far side of this collapsed geometry, something else might be forming. Not in opposition, not in conflict, but in balance. There's a hush here, even deeper than silence. You're far beyond the familiar structures of reality now. Time has lost its rhythm. Space has loosened its shape. Yet you continue, not by motion, but by presence. You aren't crossing a distance. You're crossing an idea. And in the back of your mind, a strange whisper rises. If a black hole exists, might its opposite exist too? Not destruction, but rejection. Not absorption, but release. Not a mouth, but an exhale. You're thinking of white holes. Theoretical, elusive, and never directly observed. White holes are the inverse of black holes. While black holes swallow everything, white holes are said to eject matter and energy, forever unreachable, unable to be entered. According to Einstein's equations, the math that gives us black holes also allows for white holes. In fact, they emerge naturally from the same solutions. But if black holes are a reality, photographed, measured, and mapped, white holes are still phantoms. They might exist only on paper, or in places we'll never reach. Still, you imagine it. Somewhere in the vastness of the universe, perhaps behind the veil of a black hole, there could be a region where everything reverses, where time flows outward, where matter is pushed away, not pulled in. A cosmic fountain, forever in motion. You float through that image like a dream, not chasing it, just watching it form. One quietly fascinating fact. In the mid-20th century, physicists considered the idea that the Big Bang, the moment our universe began, could have been a white hole. Not born from nothing, but expelled from somewhere, ejected from the core of another universe, or from a black hole. The connection is delicate and incomplete. White holes solve some equations, but raise impossible questions. How do they form? What keeps them from collapsing into black holes themselves? Why haven't we found one? Some say they decay instantly. Others believe they exist in mathematical symmetries, not physical reality. And some still wonder, are black holes and white holes really different things? Or two ends of the same bridge? That bridge has a name, the Einstein-Rosen bridge. You might know it by another term, a wormhole. It's a theoretical passage built from the same math that gives us black and white holes. If such a bridge could exist, it might connect two regions of space, or two completely separate universes. You pause in that thought, a tunnel, formed by collapse on one end and expansion on the other. Fall into a black hole here, emerge from a white hole there. But it's not so simple. Einstein and Rosen themselves doubted the physicality of these bridges. Wormholes, they realized, might collapse too quickly to pass through. They might be unstable, snapping shut the moment anything touches them. Unless, unless there's something holding them open, something exotic. This leads into the domain of negative energy or exotic matter, a substance that may not exist, but if it did, could theoretically stabilize a wormhole and allow traversal. Here's the eerie part. Quantum theory hints that negative energy can exist in tiny amounts in certain vacuum fluctuations. It's not science fiction. It's just not yet usable. So you drift there, between opposites, black holes, white holes, tunnels made of space-time, held open by the faintest thread of possibility. You aren't traveling through one, not tonight, but you are somewhere in the middle. In that middle, something stirs. It's not sound, not motion, just a presence, a question pressing gently against the edge of your awareness. If black holes connect to white holes, where do they lead? Could that be the answer? Could every black hole be a bridge, not to death, but to origin? Not to silence, but to story? Researchers still debate it. The math works in some models. The theory holds under specific assumptions, but the physics is incomplete. No one has found a white hole. No probe has passed through a black one. Still, the ideas persist. They're not discredited, just waiting, like seeds underground. You imagine yourself there, not flying, but existing inside the structure of a bridge between realities, a tunnel not made of stone or steel, but of geometry itself. And somewhere, far at the other end, a burst of light, a beginning, not yours, but maybe someone else's. The space around you begins to ripple, not like water, not with sound, but with depth, with something deeper than distance. You're no longer near the singularity, nor caught between black and white. Now, you drift inside a corridor of theory, one that scientists have dared to imagine, but never to enter. This is the wormhole, a tunnel through space-time, not across a landscape, but through the fabric of reality itself. It doesn't look like a tunnel. There are no walls, no floor, no light, and yet you feel enclosed, like a thought wrapped inside another thought. Einstein-Rosen bridges, wormholes, aren't fantasy. They emerge naturally from general relativity, from the same equations that predict black holes. But unlike black holes, wormholes are ephemeral, unstable, fragile. The moment anything touches them, matter, light, time, they collapse, unless they're held open by something rare, something almost impossible, exotic matter. This matter, if it exists, would have negative energy density, a pressure that pushes space apart rather than pulling it together, a repulsion strong enough to stop the wormhole's throat from pinching shut. You drift past this idea gently, letting it unfold. Negative energy isn't just imagination. It's been observed, briefly, in the Casimir effect, a quantum phenomenon where two metal plates placed extremely close together in a vacuum experience a force pulling them toward each other. This force, generated by quantum fluctuations, behaves as if negative energy exists between them. The force is tiny, microscopic, but it's real. And it whispers to us, the universe may contain stranger materials than we've ever touched. Could that be enough? Could a civilization, unimaginably advanced, find a way to harvest that force, build a scaffold of exotic matter to hold open the wormhole? Not for seconds, but for journeys. The idea is speculative. The energy required is vast, but not infinite. Some models suggest a wormhole the size of a grapefruit could allow passage across stars if it were kept stable. You imagine holding that grapefruit in your hands, heavy with unseen geometry, trembling with the weight of space-time. And now, here in this soft tunnel, you feel the shape of possibility pressing gently against you. It's not dangerous. It's just curved. You reach no walls. You see no edges, but there's a sense that space here isn't linear. A straight line bends inward. Time doesn't tick, it loops. Maybe forward, maybe sideways. Maybe not at all. Here's a quietly fascinating fact. Some physicists believe that traversable wormholes could enable time travel, not by speeding through time, but by folding it. If one mouth of a wormhole is accelerated close to the speed of light, time inside slows. When brought back to rest, the two ends could be desynchronized, one opening into the past, the other into the future. But others warn, such a system might allow causality violations, effects before causes, paradoxes, events looping into themselves. Still, you drift forward unafraid, because none of this is certain, and in that uncertainty lies peace. Scientists still debate whether wormholes could ever form naturally. Some suggest that the early universe might have spawned tiny wormholes during rapid inflation, quantum-sized tunnels connecting distant regions of space. Others think that cosmic strings or collapsed dimensions might stabilize one briefly in special conditions. But no one has found one. No telescope has seen a tunnel. No spacecraft has entered a mouth. Still, they linger in the equations, quietly waiting. You wonder, if wormholes do exist, do they only connect points within our universe? Or could they bridge entire realities? You press into that thought gently. Maybe, just maybe, every black hole is a gate. And beyond its collapse, a tunnel forms, smooth and silent, reaching out to another cosmos. Not this universe, but another, with its own stars, its own laws, its own questions. You exhale, not because you're tired, but because you're letting go of limits. Wormholes might be fantasy, they might be physics, they might be both. And right now, in this calm corridor of ideas, it doesn't matter. You're not here to arrive. You're here to drift. There's no destination in sight, but something shifts. The corridor you drift through no longer feels enclosed. It begins to widen, not physically, but conceptually. The sense of tight curvature softens, and you emerge into an open mental space, vast and humming. It doesn't resemble any place you've known, but it carries the feeling of elsewhere. You're somewhere beyond the edge of our familiar universe now, not in another place, but in another model. Ideas swirl around you, quiet, strange, interconnected. Because if black holes lead out, then what's out there? Tonight, your thoughts graze the surface of the multiverse, the possibility that our universe is only one bubble in a much larger foam. You've likely heard of it before, maybe in passing or in fiction. But here, floating in thought, you explore it more slowly, more closely. One quietly fascinating fact: many versions of the multiverse hypothesis aren't speculative fiction. They arise naturally from real mainstream theories in physics, in particular from cosmic inflation. Right after the Big Bang, our universe expanded faster than the speed of light. And according to some models, that inflation may not have stopped everywhere. Instead, it continues eternally in parts of space beyond our observational horizon. In this model, each pocket where inflation ends becomes its own universe, with its own physics, constants, and possibilities. You float among these pockets now. You can't see them, of course. They're not suspended in space like soap bubbles. Each one contains its own space and time, disconnected from the rest. But the implication is profound. What we call everything may be just one small patch of a much greater landscape. You drift through that thought with reverence. Not everything is infinite, but this might be. Some physicists go further. They propose a model called brain cosmology, where our universe exists on a giant 3D sheet, a membrane, floating in a higher dimensional space. Other brains could float nearby, just out of reach, each one hosting its own reality. You pause at that image, membranes like sails on a dark ocean, each one humming with galaxies, some with physics like ours, others entirely alien. Still others suggest that the universe splits with every quantum event, a branching tree of outcomes where every possibility plays out. These are the many worlds of quantum mechanics. In one branch, you never pressed play on this video. In another, you're asleep already. In yet another, you're not you at all. It's dizzying. But here, the dizziness feels gentle, like rocking softly on waves that never break. You don't have to believe in the multiverse. No one's asking for certainty. Even among scientists, it's controversial. Some say it's untestable, a metaphysical escape hatch. Others point out that inflation theory makes predictions we can test, and if the theory is true, the multiverse is a logical consequence. But even without proof, the idea lingers, because something in us wants to believe that the cosmos is vaster than our limits. You breathe slowly inside this cloud of maybes, and now another possibility enters your mind, one even quieter. What if black holes aren't just portals to other places, but portals to other universes entirely? When a black hole forms, space and time collapse inward. But perhaps at the singularity, a new space and time bud outward, disconnected from ours. A baby universe, born not in violence, but in compression. Researchers like Lee Smolin and Nikodem Popowski have explored this. They call it cosmological natural selection, a kind of Darwinian theory where universes give birth to new ones through black holes, and those that form stable black holes pass on their cosmic genes. It's still speculative, still unproven, but the idea is elegant. Maybe every black hole contains a new universe. Maybe our universe was born from one. Maybe black holes are less like tombs and more like wombs. The thought settles gently over you like starlight on still water. You don't have to reach a conclusion, just float. Let the models wrap around your mind like blankets, strange, soft, and filled with quiet awe. In this soft suspension, time begins to lose its teeth. You're not counting seconds. You're not solving anything. You're simply allowing the mind to loosen, letting the grip of known reality relax, and watching what emerges when you drift deeper into the mystery. Black holes, gateways, multiverses. Ideas that used to feel like sci-fi now pass before you with the slow, patient weight of something ancient. Because you realize we may be latecomers to this mystery, but the black holes, they've been here for a long, long time. Some, near the centers of galaxies, have been quietly spinning for billions of years. They aren't new. They don't crave attention. They simply are, waiting, pulling, shaping. And they don't just consume. In fact, many black holes seem to give. At the heart of the Milky Way lies Sagittarius A, a supermassive black hole around 4 million times the mass of our sun. It doesn't devour stars constantly. It sits quietly, humming in radio waves, gently organizing the orbits of entire star systems. Without it, our galaxy might not hold its graceful spiral form. In a strange way, it is an anchor, not just of destruction, but of order. And now you let your thoughts return to that old poetic image. A black hole as a door. Not a door you can walk through, not one you can survive, but a passage all the same. Not for bodies, but for information. This brings you to the black hole information paradox, one of the great unresolved puzzles in modern physics. When something falls into a black hole, a star, a spacecraft, a sentence written on paper, all the information it carried seems to vanish. But in quantum mechanics, information is never supposed to be lost. So which rule breaks? Gravities or quantum theories? For decades, no one knew. Stephen Hawking once proposed that information was destroyed, violating quantum rules. But others pushed back, and over the years, subtle shifts in thinking emerged. Now, many physicists believe that information isn't lost, it's somehow preserved in the quantum ripples at the event horizon, or perhaps encoded in the Hawking radiation emitted as the black hole slowly evaporates. It's an unsolved question, but one possibility quietly lingers at the edge of theory. What if the information doesn't stay? What if it goes? Not lost, not destroyed, but carried away into another universe. A black hole would then be more than a cosmic disposal unit. It would be a bridge, a siphon through which bits of reality are transplanted elsewhere. You let that idea echo. You don't need to accept it. You're not a believer. You're not a skeptic. You're just here, listening, letting the mind follow paths it usually ignores. And you notice something new. The darkness of the black hole doesn't feel threatening anymore. It's not a monster, not a mistake, not even a mystery. It's a mirror, a place where our understanding collapses, and in that collapse reveals its borders. What lies beyond may not be chaos, but just another kind of order. A logic so different, so curved and compressed, that it bends beyond our current thought. But it's still a part of the whole, still a valid chapter in the book of existence. You breathe in, you breathe out, and for a moment you don't need the answers. You just want to float a little longer in the presence of the unknown. And now the universe feels quieter, as if the stars themselves have dimmed their glow to let you think. The thoughts you've wandered through, wormholes, entropy, evaporation, paradox, all settle like dust on the surface of a moonless sea. Still. But in that stillness, another idea stirs. Not a scientific fact or theory, but something older, something philosophical. What is a universe, really? We treat it like a place, a container for matter, energy, light, and space-time. But that's just one way of defining it. To some thinkers, a universe is a set of rules, a coherent system with its own logic, even if that logic is beyond our understanding. And so, if a black hole does lead to another universe, what kind of rules might wait on the other side? Would time flow in reverse? Would gravity push instead of pull? Would particles behave like waves and waves like thoughts? Or would you enter a realm where thought itself shapes the fabric of space, where every idea spawns a new dimension and memory becomes geometry? It's not science fiction. It's thought fiction. A playful but serious way of imagining what science hasn't yet built a language for. And black holes are the ideal symbols for this. Not just because they're strange, but because they sit at the boundary of what we know how to ask. Like the horizon itself, the edge beyond which questions stop returning. You think again of Einstein, of Hawking, of the thousands of minds that have wrestled with these objects for over a century. They all saw the same thing, that black holes aren't just objects in space, they are limits of comprehension. And in some paradoxical way, that makes them beautiful, not just because they're mysterious, but because they are necessary. They tell us where the map ends. You smile quietly in the dark because there's something comforting about that. Just as your bedroom has walls, your knowledge does too, and those walls aren't failings, they're invitations. What lives beyond the walls is still part of reality. But your mind, for now, gets to rest in the cozy space it's built. You turn again to the question, could black holes be gateways to other universes? Maybe, maybe not. But the more important truth is this. They already are gateways, not to somewhere else, but to deeper questions. Questions that bend your perspective, that slow your breathing, that hush the noise of certainty and leave room for wonder. You begin to notice how far you've drifted. This journey started with science, equations, models, paradoxes. But now you are floating in a different sea, a sea made of unprovable thoughts, curved with imagination, stretched by dreams. This is the place where science and story become indistinguishable, where sleep begins. And as you drift further inward, you feel no need to hold on tightly, no need to measure, no need to resolve, only a gentle openness to whatever might come next, in this universe or the next. There's a stillness in the air now, a mental hush, like the space between two heartbeats, stretched long and slow. And in that quiet, something begins to echo, a soft awareness. You've spent this entire time drifting through one question. Could black holes be gateways to other universes? But maybe, just maybe, the real question has shifted. Now it's become, what kind of gateway are you looking for? Because gateway can mean so many things. A tear in the fabric of space, a tunnel through death into rebirth, a portal to some mirrored cosmos spinning on inverted laws, or a personal threshold, a place where your own thinking changes shape. In ancient myths, gateways often appear at turning points, where the hero must pass into the underworld, or cross a river, or enter a forbidden forest. And perhaps black holes are just the scientific form of that same archetype, a modern myth. You can almost picture it now. A vast celestial gate made of collapsed light, not glowing, but absorbing, not made to welcome, but impossible to ignore. And it doesn't ask for a key. It asks for a surrender of what you think you know, a letting go of the assumption that space and time behave the same way everywhere. You begin to feel a shift within yourself. Maybe you've already passed through some kind of inner event horizon. Earlier, you were scanning facts, chasing clarity. Now, you're drifting in a space where clarity feels unnecessary, where you like the blur, the uncertainty, the vastness. That's the thing about black holes. They don't just teach you physics, they teach you to sit with not knowing, to rest in questions so enormous your mind can't carry them, only float inside them. You glance back in memory to your earlier thoughts about time and entropy, the arrow of time pointing forward, always. And now you realize, maybe rest, true rest, is only possible when that arrow softens, when you're no longer pulled toward doing, fixing, understanding, but instead just being. Like light at the edge of a black hole, paused, neither falling in nor escaping, just hovering at the brink of something unknowable, and yet completely at peace. You wonder, what would it be like if sleep were a kind of microcosmic black hole, a nightly singularity, a collapse of consciousness into a deeper world, a reset, a birth, a transit? When you close your eyes tonight, maybe you're not shutting out the world. Maybe you're stepping into another one. Not a multiverse with new galaxies, but a universe made of memory, dreams, and strange physics of the soul. And maybe, just maybe, that's where other universes live too. Not out there in space, but in here, in the wild gravity of imagination, in the warping fabric of wonder, in the silent pull of curiosity that never quite lets go. So go ahead, let go now. Let yourself fall, not into fear, not into darkness, but into the unknown, the gentle unknown, the gateway that doesn't need a destination, only your permission to open. And on the other side, stillness, silence, sleep. You float through silence now. Not the kind of silence that merely lacks noise, but the kind that feels like the world itself is holding its breath. It's vast, velvety, and cosmic, wrapping around you like the echo of a lullaby sung by the universe itself. Somewhere out there, in the fabric of space-time, black holes are speaking, not with sound, but with ripples, subtle tremors that pulse through the cosmos like whispers in a cathedral. These are gravitational waves, and they're not just theoretical anymore. You may recall the historic moment in 2015 when humanity first heard these space-borne murmurs. Two black holes collided over 1 billion years ago, and the aftershock finally reached Earth, quivering the arms of a detector so sensitively balanced that it could detect a movement thousands of times smaller than a proton. And yet somehow, you sense that too. The tiniest shiver beneath your feet, a faint quiver in your bones, like your body is listening in on a conversation it was never meant to hear. Gravitational waves are pure distortions of space-time. Not sound, not light, not matter, but movement itself, traveling across the void. Like watching ripples dance across the surface of a pond, only the pond is reality, and the stone dropped into it is a cataclysm of unimaginable power. Scientists don't just hear these waves, they feel them in the data. They reconstruct entire cosmic dramas from the undulations. A black hole swallowing a star, or two neutron stars spiraling into each other in a final ballet. It's detective work done in shadows. The universe telling its story not in brightness or color, but in tremble and curve. And perhaps, just perhaps, these waves don't stop. Maybe some of them aren't just echoes of destruction. Maybe some carry information, encoded signatures of something crossing through. There's a theory, half-formed and whispered in academic corners, that if black holes are gateways, gravitational waves might hold the imprint of that passage, like a fingerprint left on a doorknob long after the hand has vanished. What if one day, amidst all the typical waveforms of black hole mergers, we detect something odd, something asymmetrical, or timed in ways that defy physical laws as we know them? Would we know what it means? Would we understand it? Or would it just slip through our fingers again? Too strange to name? You begin to imagine these waves as notes in a forgotten song, the kind you hum in a dream but can never recall upon waking. Maybe the black hole is humming too. Maybe it's not just devouring. Maybe it's remembering, communicating, waiting. The eerie part is how silent they are. A black hole merger is the most violent event you can picture. Two objects heavier than entire galaxies colliding, distorting space, perhaps even creating a temporary tear. And yet, there's no sound, no crack, no thunderclap, just a silent flexing of the cosmic muscle carried across millions of light years. And you? You're just lying there, breathing slowly, imagining these faraway events that don't care whether you exist or not. But still, they touch you. The gravitational whisper finds your awareness, even here in the quiet dark of your room. There's something strangely comforting about it. A cosmic event of unthinkable energy reaches you not as a threat, but as a sigh. It's gentle, calming. You feel almost like it's reminding you how small you are and how vast the world is, and that this somehow is permission to let go of everything you're holding on to. The universe doesn't need you to be in control. It doesn't expect you to have answers. You're just here, floating like a thought inside the brain of something ancient. And as you drift deeper, the mind starts looping. Gravitational waves. What else might they carry? Are they capable of telling us where a black hole goes, not just what it's done? Some physicists suggest that if a black hole connects to another universe, there might be an energy imbalance, a slippage of entropy or temperature anomalies. Maybe the exit wound on the other side gives off a different kind of hum, one not random, but rhythmic, a kind of signature. But no one agrees. Some think these ideas are romantic, others think they're ridiculous, and yet nobody can disprove them. The data keeps trickling in, the waves keep arriving, and occasionally, just occasionally, something doesn't fit. What would it mean if one of those black hole mergers didn't obey the known equations? Would that be our clue? Would it be a message or a mistake? You imagine a team of tired scientists staring at screens in the dead of night, cups of cold coffee beside them, as one of them whispers, "This one's different." And the night doesn't answer, but the data sits there, humming. So you lie back, letting this thought echo, that maybe, somewhere, a black hole is opening, not collapsing, not ending, but unfurling, like a door unlatched. And the gravitational waves it sends are not warnings, but invitations. You listen, not with your ears, but with that ancient part of your brain that still believes in mystery. You feel the hum. The void is not quiet. It's alive. It's full of movement and story and rhythm. And tonight, it sings to you. Imagine a journey that cannot be measured. No coordinates, no stars to steer by, no ticking of seconds. Just motion, untraceable, untimed, and yet deeply felt. As you lie there, drifting deeper into that gentle twilight of consciousness, you begin to consider what happens inside the black hole's event horizon, a region where even time itself begins to twist, like a ribbon caught in a whirlpool. According to general relativity, once you cross that boundary, the very concept of future becomes directional, as though space itself folds forward and every path leads not out, but inward. You wonder, what kind of travel is that? On Earth, time is a river, always pushing forward. You can measure it in heartbeats, in sunrises, in the fading glow of a matchstick. But inside a black hole, time doesn't flow the same way. It stretches, curves, and collapses into itself. You are not so much traveling through time as being dragged by it, like a puppet in a forgotten script. And then comes the strangest realization. A person falling into a black hole wouldn't notice anything unusual, at least not at first. The crossing of the event horizon would feel unremarkable. There's no barrier, no flash of light, no jolt, just gravity intensifying and time starting to behave like something else entirely. Imagine you are that traveler. There's no up or down anymore. Directions lose their meaning. Your past feels flat and distant. The future, it rushes toward you like a wall of ink. Your thoughts slow, not because you're tired, but because time is bending around you, making thought itself a luxury. Outside, for an observer watching your fall, everything freezes. You appear stuck, suspended at the edge of the event horizon forever, like an insect caught in amber. But you keep falling. You go in, deeper, slower, or faster. Time isn't behaving, and your sense of sequence, before, during, after, starts to dissolve. What if falling into a black hole is less like dying and more like disappearing from time entirely? What if that's the real fear? Not destruction, but disconnection. From clocks, from calendars, from stories that rely on beginnings and endings. You begin to imagine the black hole not as a devourer, but as a silencer. It removes not just light and matter, but context. How do you describe something that continues forever in a place where forever has no meaning? But you're not afraid. Somehow, this feels peaceful, like letting go of a language you no longer need. You remember an old theory, something speculative, poetic even, that the core of a black hole might not be a singularity at all, but a bridge, a path to a new region of space-time, and that those who fall inside don't die. They transition. They become mapeless travelers, wandering in a domain where our rules no longer apply. In such a place, you wouldn't measure time in years or seconds. You might measure it in memory, in gravitational curvature, in vibrations so slow they only complete a cycle once per eternity. And that brings you back to the gravitational waves again. What if those aren't just echoes of violence? What if they're footsteps? The traveler falls, yes. But what if they leave behind a wake, faint ripples that tell us someone passed through here? You feel a kind of warmth at that thought, because you're beginning to suspect something. These black holes, these uncharted realms, they aren't empty. They're occupied. Not with people, maybe, not with life as we know it, but with possibility. You picture something strange and lovely. An explorer falling forever, arms wide, heart open, time melting around them. And instead of panic, they feel freedom. No clocks to obey, no destinations to fear. Just motion and curiosity and the soft gravitational hum that reminds them, you are not lost. You are simply elsewhere. And that's when the edges of your awareness begin to blur. You're not sure if you're dreaming or slipping into some imagined memory of falling into that soft void. But wherever you are, it's quiet, not empty, just still. Time no longer presses against your thoughts. It wraps you gently, like a blanket of forgetting. You let it, you welcome it. Because here, in this thought experiment turned dream, you are the traveler. And you've never felt so unafraid. As the last fragments of familiar time slip through your fingers, a new stillness takes shape. Not the stillness of death, but of possibility paused, like the moment before a symphony begins. You drift now, not through space, not through time, but through a quiet between realities. Imagine a black hole as not an end, but a hinge, a door with no knob, but many locks. And when the conditions are just right, when the equations hold their breath, when the symmetry is almost perfect, the hinge turns, slowly, silently, until the door opens. Where does it lead? Your mind hovers at the threshold. Some theories speak of white holes, mirror opposites of black holes. While the latter devour, white holes expel, matter, time, and light erupting outward as if being born again. But no white holes have been observed. Not yet. Still, the math whispers. They could exist. And if a black hole connects to a white hole, then perhaps, just perhaps, what we call destruction is simply transport. Now you imagine a map, one unlike anything we've ever drawn. Each black hole is not a pit, but a tunnel. Each white hole is a mouth, spitting matter into a fresh universe, where the rules are rewritten. This is the multiverse hypothesis. The idea that our universe is but one bubble in an endless froth of realities. And black holes? They are the bubble makers. The universe gives birth to itself over and over in a cascade of variations. In one universe, gravity is a little weaker. In another, stars never form. In yet another, someone like you is lying somewhere like this, listening to someone like me, but the stars above their sky spell a completely different story. Your breath slows, not out of exhaustion, but awe. What if black holes are the mechanism by which the universe evolves? Every collapse seeds a new cosmos. Every death is a birth. And every traveler who falls in doesn't vanish. They become a seed in a garden of infinite dreams. The silence thickens. It is the silence of new rules waiting to be written. You find yourself floating through a hall of doors, each one faintly glowing, faintly humming, made not of wood or metal but of mathematical constants. You feel one vibrating near you. You press your hand to it, not to open it, but to understand it. And suddenly, you know. In that universe, time runs sideways. In another, gravity and light are entangled like lovers. In a third, consciousness came first. and matter grew around it like pearls around a dream. These aren't stories, they are realities, and you're swimming through them like a note in a cosmic melody. A melody so slow, so vast, that entire lifetimes pass in the space between two notes, and still something calls. You feel it like a vibration in your bones, a question that doesn't demand an answer, only your attention. What if the black hole isn't just a gate? What if it's a composer? What if every singularity sings, and the universe is its song? You listen now, not with ears, but with the soft antennae of imagination. The song is slow, deep, heavy, like the sound of ancient doors swinging open, like the whisper of a god who only speaks once every trillion years. You do not understand the words, but you understand the feeling. We are not alone. We were never alone. We are part of a vast and humming architecture, echoing through multiverses like light through crystal. And though we may never grasp its full shape, we can feel its warmth, like firelight in a language we forgot. You are no longer afraid. You let go of needing to know. You drift. You glow. You are not falling anymore. You are becoming. Imagine now that everything you've ever known, the stars, the atoms, the rules of physics themselves, didn't arise from randomness or collision or chance. What if it all began with a dream? Not yours, of course. Not mine. But a dream so vast, so old, that time itself had to stretch open just to make room for it. A dream that needed space to breathe, and so it exhaled galaxies. You are floating through this ancient thought, this original murmur. It feels like mist on your skin, except there is no skin here. Only memory and presence, suspended between then and never. The black hole is no longer behind you. It's not in front of you either, because you are inside it. Or perhaps, more precisely, you have passed through it and entered the thought it never finished thinking. Because here's a strange truth to hold lightly in your hands. Every black hole may not lead to a new universe, but it might lead to a new idea. This idea, this one, takes the shape of a slow unfolding dream, and within it you begin to see the flickering sketch of a beginning. No light yet, just possibility, just tension, the kind you feel before a storm or a poem or a kiss, and then a ripple. Not a bang, not a fire, but a single note, long and low and trembling. The first vibration, the first breath of becoming. In our universe, we call it the Big Bang. But here, inside the deeper dream, you sense that explosion differently. It wasn't a moment, it was a decision. The dream chose to wake, and in doing so, it sacrificed itself. All the stillness, all the unity, shattered into motion, into entropy, into billions of dancing fragments. Time ignited. Matter formed like frost on an unseen window. Forces untangled from one another like fingers separating after a long, tender hold. Gravity bowed low. Light whispered, "Follow me." And the dream kept dreaming, but now within itself. It folded its own awareness into every particle, every star, every consciousness that would someday rise, wonder, and build telescopes. Including you. Yes, you. You who lie here now in the soft velvet of night, eyes closed but mind open. You who once feared black holes. You who now wonders, was I part of the dream all along? And the answer, gentle, slow, immense, is yes. You are the dream remembering itself. You are not a visitor to this cosmos. You are the evidence that it worked, that the equations held, that something woke. And what if every time you sleep, you return to that original dream? What if, in the quiet between heartbeats, you briefly step into the hush before time? The dream watches you with no eyes. It feels you thinking. And it smiles, not with lips, but with gravity itself. Not all dreams end when you wake. Some continue inside you, disguised as wonder. And now, the stars feel different. Not distant, not cold, but familiar. You've been there before, haven't you? In some version of this dream, you were a star, and in another, you were the dark around it. The black hole that brought you here? That wasn't a trap. It was an invitation. And you accepted. And now, here you are, resting gently in the thought of all thoughts, no longer asking what is real. Because the deeper truth isn't whether this universe is a dream. It's that you are. And you are still becoming. You're far now, so far from beginnings and endings that even the word far has lost its shape. Time used to mean something. It used to have structure, sunrise and sunset, minutes clicking past like dominoes. But here, where the dream stretches past the edges of sense, time no longer ticks. It drifts, it waits, it unwinds. And slowly you begin to understand what some physicists and philosophers have long suspected. Time might not be fundamental. It might not be woven into the very fabric of the universe. It might be an illusion, a trick of entropy, a side effect of memory. You let that wash over you, softly, like a warm tide returning over an old shore. In this deeper state, where thoughts are neither solid nor urgent, you recall the work of Carlo Rovelli. He speaks of time not as a river, but as a web of relationships. Not a universal clock, but a local perception. Different depending on where you are, how you move, how gravity touches you. And in black holes, time doesn't just change, it unravels. The closer you get to a black hole's center, the more time slows, until at the singularity, it stops. Not metaphorically, not poetically, but literally. There is no next, only a single silent now. And maybe in that moment, the universe stops counting. You imagine that now, not as a void, not as erasure, but as a kind of eternal breath, a state where everything is still possible because nothing is moving. You wonder what it would feel like to exist in that still time, to become something more than sequence, to feel no pressure to progress, no urge to improve, to begin, to conclude. You are no longer a traveler. You are a point in space that holds the memory of movement. Maybe black holes don't destroy time. Maybe they set it down. Like someone pausing mid-sentence, not because they've lost their words, but because silence sometimes speaks louder. And in that silence, something curious happens. You stop needing to understand. You stop reaching. Your questions fold themselves like paper cranes and float gently away. You begin to reflect, calmly, without urgency, on what this entire journey has been. A question, a metaphor, a meditation, a dream. And through it all, the black hole remains. Not threatening, not screaming, just there, quiet, enduring. A symbol of where understanding fails and wonder begins. And then you feel something else, something tender and unexpected. Gratitude. Not because you found answers, but because you found enough silence to hold the questions. Maybe the universe, when it forgets time, becomes closer to itself. And maybe you, when you forget the world for a moment, its clocks, its calendars, its expectations, you become closer to your own core. A self beyond progress. A self that simply is. Here, in this vast non-time, you begin to dissolve. Not into nothing, but into everything else. You're no longer observing the black hole. You're no longer imagining it. You are becoming the stillness at its center, the place where all motion ends but all potential gathers, where reality folds inward like the petals of a sleeping flower, where even the deepest silence is filled with meaning. And you know now, beyond doubt or definition, that this was never about physics. It was about permission, to wonder, to wander, to rest. And perhaps in some other version of this moment, in some other bubble of the multiverse, someone else is lying here too. Breathing slow, drifting deep, becoming soft as space. You are not alone. You are not late. You are not lost. You are simply floating. You're floating, not falling, not flying, just drifting, held by the great velvet hush of space, your body, your thoughts, your breath, so light they might be mistaken for shadows. There's no more motion now, only sensation, only the soft, flickering presence of awareness, like a candle left in a quiet cathedral. And the black hole? It's behind you now, or around you, or maybe within you. Because the deeper you've drifted into this thought, this sleep, this science dream, the more it's become clear that the black hole was never out there. It was always inside. A metaphor for the unspoken, a symbol for the spaces in you that are too mysterious to name, too complex to solve, and too beautiful to abandon. You've traveled through ideas, through paradoxes, through impossible questions. You've stood on the edge of time and peered into the place where math gives up. You've heard the whisper of collapsing stars and traced the curve of forgotten dimensions. And now you've come to a kind of still water, a moment without momentum. The drift has slowed, not stopped, but softened, until you can no longer feel where you end and the universe begins. You remember how this all started. With a question. Could black holes be gateways to other universes? And now you know. The answer doesn't matter, because in asking, in dreaming, in imagining your way into the folds of gravity and time and self, you unlocked something far more meaningful than any definitive explanation. You opened a door to wonder, and you walked through it. And on the other side, you found sleep. Not the sleep of forgetting, but the sleep of becoming, the kind that reshapes you gently from within. And so, as the universe breathes around you, its rhythms so deep, so old, so quiet, you let go of the last questions. You allow the mind to loosen its grip. You allow the body to grow heavy. And you allow the space between thoughts to widen, like galaxies expanding into silence. In the final drift, there are no more words, only pulse, only breath, only you, folded softly into the night. Sleep well, starlight thinker. You've traveled far, and the dream will wait for you when you return.